Welcome to Morbid Outdoors, the podcast that ventures deep into the shadows of the wild. Here, we unravel the mysteries of missing persons, explore spine-chilling legends, and share the most morbid stories that nature has to offer. From the depths of the dense forests to the highest mountain peaks, we'll uncover the secrets that lie hidden in the great outdoors. Join us as we navigate the eerie, the unexplained, and the terrifying. So if you dare, grab your gear and let's embark on a journey into the unknown. This is Morbid Outdoors. Hello everyone, happy Wednesday. I am pre-recording this and I actually just got back from my hometown of Hot Springs National Park, Arkansas. I flew back this past weekend to see my family and also to attend my 10-year high school class reunion. It was really fun to see old faces and people that I really haven't seen in 10 years, but it was also like, oh, only like 20 people showed up. So it wasn't like a super big deal, but it was still fun to connect and talk with people that I hadn't seen in a while, and made for some very interesting and awkward stories. And I really wish that I could tell them here. And I suppose I could, but I don't want to make anyone feel bad that I felt awkward. So not going to do that, but it was very interesting. So if you have a chance, I recommend going back to your high school reunion, even though you don't feel like it's important to go to. You might have some fun. You might get a fun story out of it. So I recommend it. It's not for everyone, although it's something to do. So I just flew back to Arkansas for that. And now I'm back in Utah. And now I'm just, back to real life. Got to go away for a long weekend, and now I'm back to real life. And this weekend, my husband and I have tickets for the Halloween lift at Sundance. And so we're going to go enjoy some fun fall festivities at Sundance Resort. And I think the lift is supposed to be like a haunted house, but on a ski lift. So we'll see. Hopefully it's fun and worth it. In terms of like spooky or scary movies, I would love any and all recommendations that you have, because I watch a bunch of spooky and scary movies, but I feel like now I just only need to watch that for the month of October to kind of get in the spirit of, things. And so I'm looking for any recommendations. So DM me on Instagram, email me. I really want to know what movies you think are amazing. And personally, I will just recommend my all-time favorite. It's kind of like an obscure, scary movie, but the cinematography of it is amazing. And I love how dry it is. And it's called Creep. And it's on Netflix. So if you've never seen the movie Creep, I highly recommend. It's such a good watch. Creep 2 is also amazing, and I really hope they're able to pull through and do a Creep 3. But I watched Creep with my husband while we were in Washington in like a little cabin, and I was like, oh my God, how have I not seen this movie before? It was so good. I made my mom watch it later on, and she was like, what the hell, the entire time. But it's really good. If you like, the horror genre, thriller, psychological thriller, Creep is so good. So highly recommend that. That's my recommendation to you, but I would love to hear your recommendations. So shoot those my way, because I need more content to watch. But anyways, so that's all for me, I think, right now. I hope you guys are having a great Wednesday. Time to gear up and get outdoors. Let's dive into our case. One of northern Utah's most scenic drives is the Mirror Lake Highway. Multiple people go missing every year in the surrounding national forest, but only 2 of those people have never been found. Their cases are 13 years apart, but they have similar circumstances. Despite extensive and prompt search efforts, they have never been located. These are the stories of Garrett Bardsley and Melvin Heaps. Okay, so I actually chose these two stories because I am very familiar with these cases, and I actually did hiking in this area this summer so that I could see exactly where these two people went missing from. And let me tell you, like, Mirror Lake Highway is so incredibly beautiful. And honestly, right now, there's a wildfire burning kind of in that area called the Yellow Lake Fire. And I'm really hoping that it doesn't burn all of this beautiful area because it would be devastating to all of the people that use this and recreate outside out there every summer. Currently, the Yellow Lake Fire has burned 30,000 acres and it's not really contained. So I'm really hoping that this national forest isn't completely devastated by this wildfire. Anyways, like I was saying, it's a very familiar area to me. I did a lot of hiking out there this summer. I'm planning to take some friends backpacking out there next summer. There are so many lakes, and there's Bald Mountain Pass, and just a lot of really, really beautiful outdoor recreation. And so I actually have researched these cases separately, and I'm only including them in the same episode because of the geographical location. And so I really don't know if there's a connection, but besides the geography. So I just wanted to throw that out there and just say I'm not going to assume wild things, but just to say, like, yes, they are kind of in the same area, but also they're kind of not in the same area, if that makes sense. And if you know this area of the Mirror Lake Highway, you would understand what I'm saying. But if you don't, just know that it's a very long highway that starts in like Camas, Utah, and it goes all the way up to the Wyoming border into Evanston. So it's a very, very beautiful drive and lots of great trails and backpacking trails and lakes and fishing. It's amazing out there. So, because there's not like one specific area, I have bad reviews for the Uinta-Wasatch-Cache National Forest. Jason said, "Don't come. It's terrible. There's no cell phone service to be had. The camp spots are few and far between, and the riffraff never leave. Better to head south to St. George." Nick also said, "This place is terrible. Don't go. Too crowded and too many bugs. Definitely overfished as well." So, again, it sounds like these maybe could be sarcastic, but like there are a lot of bugs. I'll give him that because the mosquitoes out there in the summer are awful. You have to walk around with like a bug net on your head because they'll be going in your mouth and everything. It gets bad. So I honestly can't tell if these are like sarcastic or not. We have a couple more reviews. Dawson said, "Cool up higher in the mountains, but someone needs to do something about the excessive amount of dead trees. Good for firewood, though." Yeah, well, that's kind of what happens in a forest. And also, I would agree. And like the Forest Service does a lot of work out there to do timber stand improvement or TSI. But since there's a wildfire, this is kind of what happens. Our last review is from Matt, and he said, "Very barren, not a nice place at all, nothing to see or do." So interesting what people say is boring because what they think is boring, I think is absolutely amazing. The description from visitutah.com states, "Less than 2 hours from Salt Lake City metro area, Mirror Lake Highway stretches 42 miles along State Route 150 and is one of the most popular driving mountain routes in the state. It begins in Camas, Utah, and ascends high into the Uinta Mountains, cresting at 10,715 feet at Bald Mountain Pass, and then descends past Hayden Peak, Cletting Peak, and Holiday Park Peak before meeting with the Wyoming border. This scenic byway has many overlooks, picnic areas, waterfalls, lakes, trails, and campgrounds. This mountain range is one of the few in North America that runs east to west rather than north to south," end quote. So that's from visitutah.com. And I mean, guys, if you live in the state of Utah or like Wyoming or like a surrounding state, this could be a day for you. Pack a picnic, go drive it. bring your camera. It is just so beautiful. It's probably my most favorite and cherished places in the entire state. So, starting with climate, summer temperatures range from 65 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit during the day and about 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit at night. Winter temperatures range from well below freezing to a high of 42 degrees during the day. And in fact, this highway, it actually is closed during the winter. They do not maintain this highway, so it does close when it starts to snow because it is not plowed, it is not kept up. You can only access it by snowmobile in the winter. Extreme winter weather hazards, including travel, prohibitive snowfall, and minute-to-minute changes are probable from November through February, which is why it is closed. Now, the Uinta portion of the forest, established in 1897, was the first national forest in Utah. So that can be your trivia for the episode. The first national forest established in Utah was the Uinta-Wasatch-Cache National Forest, but really the Uinta portion of that. And in 1897, President Grover Cleveland created the Uinta Forest Reserve, which is the predecessor to the Uinta-Wasatch-Cache National Forest and the Ashley National Forest. Basically, the president made a proclamation and he was like, we need to protect this area. It's valuable resources. And so it was the first national forest in Utah. Uinta is derived from the Ute word Uv-we-twe, which means pine trees or pine forest. And guys, I just want to say again, I am not Ute. I do not speak Ute, so I am sounding these out as best as I can phonetically. Wasatch is a Ute Indian word meaning low place in the high mountains. Cache is a French word meaning to hide, and it is a legacy of the early fur trappers who were the first Europeans to visit this region. So it's got some influence from the indigenous tribes that lived here, and then also from the fur trappers that came over and started, trapping furry animals for money. Now, I do want to point out another cool fact about this area, and the Jardine juniper tree in the Logan Ranger District is actually 1,500 years old and is reputed to be the oldest living tree in the Rocky Mountains. So that can also be your trivia. There's a lot of cool trivia in this episode. And there's also evidence of ancient oceans, volcanoes, and glaciers found throughout this national forest. The shoreline of ancient Lake Bonneville can be traced in the terraces along the foothills. This place is very old and very, very rugged. It's like wild country, and it is 2.5 million acres. There are 7 designated wilderness areas in the Wasatch-Cache National Forest, totaling approximately about 309,000 acres, and that comprises like 25% of the forest's total acreage. Another fun fact about Utah is the only state where every county contains some part of a national forest. So Utah is very special is what I'm trying to say, which is why I moved here. It's such an amazing state. First, in this episode, we're going to talk about Garrett Bardsley. So the location that Garrett went missing from was around Cubrant Lake in the Uinta-Wasatch-Cache National Forest. So I just want to kind of go over background and then what happened to Garrett. Garrett Bardsley was born on July 24th, 1992. He was 12 years old at the time of his disappearance, and he had just made the transition from elementary school to middle school, so he was supposed to attend Spanish Fork Middle School and be in the 6th grade at the time of his disappearance. Garrett's case is a bizarre one, and I actually feel like there's more to the story than what is told. Garrett was with his dad when he disappeared, and I think it's so odd that a 12-year-old boy who was experienced in the outdoors would just vanish into thin air. When adults go missing, it's one thing, but when a child goes missing, it's completely different. Everyone needs to be a suspect when a child goes missing, and we all know the statistics behind when children go missing or get hurt. So I just want to make it obvious. I'm not making accusations. I just feel like there are things that have never been said about Garrett's case and investigation, and I'm not sure why these questions have never been answered. So let's talk about the day that Garrett went missing. On the morning of August 20th, 2004, Garrett and his dad, Kevin, got up at 8 a.m. to go fishing at a lake near their campsite. They were on a group camping trip with other Boy Scouts. Now, my husband is an Eagle Scout, and I worked for the Boy Scouts of America at Philmont Scout Ranch in New Mexico while I was in college, so I'm very familiar with the Boy Scouts of America. And there are certain rules that all Boy Scouts know and would adhere to, and that's why I find this case so interesting, because Garrett went off by himself back to camp, and that's when he went missing. Garrett had recently taken a wilderness survival course, which is something that everyone who will be going to recreate outdoors should do. Like, I think that should be across the board before you go into any state parks, national forests. Every single person should take wilderness survival or safety tips. And I mean, it would just be so beneficial for so many people. It was reported that this camping trip was Garrett's first scout camp. So this might have been a new experience for him, but other sources say he was experienced in the outdoors. So I don't know which one it is, but I just find it weird that he would go walk back to camp by himself when he knew better and his dad knew better. So I just want to say this is something that I really would stand by for any single person. Children should never be unattended in the wilderness or the outdoors. There is no reason for a child to ever go missing outside. Parents should always be there. And I know that shit happens and it happens very quickly, but guys, like, so many children go missing in the outdoors a lot, all the time. It is terrifying. And I'm so weird about like making sure children are within my eyesight. Okay. And I don't have kids, but I do have nieces and nephews and I work with kids. And like, I am so serious about, I need to be eyes on the child because you have no idea what could happen anytime, any day, anywhere. So this is something I'm passionate about, is like safety in the outdoors, especially when it comes to children. And it's my opinion that children should never be unattended outside, no matter the age. While at Cubrent Lake with his dad, it was like a lake near Cubrent Lake. If you know the Mirror Lake area, there are tons of little lakes all around. So they were camping at Cubrent Lake, but they had walked about 150 yards to another small lake or like pond to fish. And while he was at this lake with his dad, Garrett got his feet wet and wanted to go change into dry socks. And like I said, this was just a 150-yard walk, and Garrett had done this walk many times. Garrett's dad allowed Garrett to walk back to camp by himself, and it was Garrett's plan to change his socks and shoes and return to the lake to fish with his dad. At the time, Garrett was carrying a short chrome and black ice fishing pole. My question that I don't know will ever get answered is, if Garrett was coming back to fish, why would he lug his fishing pole with him? This is a fact of the story I can't understand. Like, if you're just going to walk back, a very, very short walk back to your camp to change your shoes, why are you carrying your fishing rod if you're coming right back? And why would Garrett's dad, Kevin, just not tell him to leave the rod? It seems weird to carry a fishing rod just to change your shoes. And if, most adults would be like, hey, dude, don't worry about it. Just walk back, you're coming back, and leave your rod here. But Garrett carried his rod to go change his shoes, which is, like I said, just weird to me. Kevin said he kept his eyes on Garrett as he walked around the lake and even shouted directions reminding Garrett which path would lead straight back to camp. The campsite was about a quarter mile from the lake on a well-established path that connected with a road another quarter mile away. And a family friend was quoted as saying that he knows the area from, the camp and the fishing place. And this friend said it was no more than 150 paces distant. So not a very long walk at all. After 15 minutes, Kevin soon realized that Garrett had been gone for too long. He knew it shouldn't have taken 15 minutes for the young boy to get to camp and back, even if he dallied in changing his shoes. So Kevin's alarm bells start going off. He returned to camp himself, and it was then that he discovered that Garrett had never made it back to the campsite, and he was nowhere to be found. Everyone was on high alert very quickly because, Garrett was 12, he was a child, and he was carrying no gear other than his ice fishing pole. So immediately, like that, a large-scale search and rescue operation was launched that involved more than 200 team members and volunteers. Searchers searched into the night on August 21st, 2004, with additional teams from Cache County joining those from Utah, Salt Lake, Wasatch, and Duchesne counties on foot, horseback, and with dogs. And I actually know someone who is very good friends with the sheriff, who was sheriff in Summit County at this time. And basically, she said that he will never forget this case, and it's one that still haunts him to this day. And I can imagine why. A 12-year-old goes missing and he's nowhere to be found. And even with dogs and hundreds of people looking, they can't find him. So that was just a little side note. A few days later, the Deseret Sun reported worrying news. A Nike ankle sock matching those Garrett was wearing when he disappeared had been discovered in a field of boulders. The Nike sock was found in a boulder field about a half mile from the last place that Garrett was seen on Friday, when he left that lake to go back to camp. Quote, "The sock appears that it was taken off of a wet foot, wadded up, very consistent with what we know about Garrett." End quote. That comes from Summit County Sheriff Dave Edmonds. And like I said, he's no longer the sheriff right now of Summit County, but he was back in 2004. Now, because of where the sock was found, the sheriff said it would be in line with the assumption that Garrett sought shelter in the cold weather, maybe by going into the boulder field for a crevasse or an outcropping, something to try and get Garrett out of the weather. Edmonds said that rescuers would concentrate their efforts in and near the boulder field for Garrett, who at this time was, they presumed to be dead. And I just want to say that this sock that was found, a searcher said that it was his sock, but Garrett's mom said it was Garrett's sock. So it's not even conclusive that it was Garrett's sock. Now, the authorities were believing that Garrett became disoriented on his way back to camp and might have sought shelter as the temperatures were plummeting to near 18 degrees at night. Because of the mountainous terrain, this is, between 9,000 and 10,000 feet late in the summer, and so it was getting very cold. Searching went on for weeks, and everyone assumed that Garrett had gotten lost and perished due to exposure. And I can't help but think this is not what happened. I know I preach Occam's razor, but him getting lost on a 150 pace trail, that is not simple at all. This trail was well packed down and easy to follow per other reports. Why did he take his fishing pole? I have so many questions about the circumstances behind Garrett's disappearance. You don't get lost on a well-packed down trail that's 150 yards. That's bizarre. So no other traces of Garrett had been found when the official search was called off 9 days in. Police said they didn't have enough evidence to point to a kidnapping and were working on the assumption that Garrett had become lost as he tried to make his way back to the campsite. The search area was 40 miles wide, and they left no stone unturned. They searched arm in arm. Could Garrett really have gotten 40 miles away? Kevin, which is Garrett's dad, he seems to think Garrett curled up somewhere and died of exposure. But I ask again, where is his fishing rod? And where is Garrett? Now, the official day the search ended was October 24th, 2004 due to snowfall. Kevin was hoping that hunters in the area would keep an eye out for his son or his belongings, but he was aware that searching through 30 inches of snow would be fruitless. And Kevin said that they searched and searched and searched, and they searched roughly a 3-mile radius in the rugged mountains where he last saw his 12-year-old son. Now, this isn't a spoiler, but Garrett was not and has not been found. It has been 20 years, and Garrett still has not been recovered. The Bardsley family was devastated but determined to preserve Garrett's memory. And within months of Garrett's disappearance, the Garrett Bardsley Foundation was up and running. 6 months later, a school bearing Garrett's name was built in Ecuador, and within a year, Kevin Bardsley had formed a well-trained search team with the intention of saving other families from the grief he has endured. Now, Garrett's foundation has helped in searches when needed out in the Uinta since Garrett's disappearance, and the last update that they posted was in 2019. And I'm not sure if that's because no one has gone missing in this area since then, except there is an adult male that's missing, but it wasn't like a hiking thing out there. But this is the last update I could find. And the Garrett Bardsley Foundation has aided in 14 searches. So let's discuss theories. Now, I didn't mention this before, but a lot of people think that Garrett might have fallen into or sought shelter in a mine shaft, and maybe, died from suffocation. There's further down you go, the less air, or it collapsed. People maybe were thinking that he made it to the road and was abducted. And then there's always the angle of foul play. And I think foul play is where I fall in this particular case. And I only think that there's foul play because there's a lot missing to the story for me. I don't know, I don't have those police records and police reports, but I just think it's strange that Garrett took his fishing pole to go change his shoes. Why would you take your fishing pole when you're coming right back? And as far as I know and could see on resources online, there were no witnesses that morning that saw both Garrett and Kevin fishing. They actually got up early to go out there before anybody else woke up. So I also find that suspicious. Like I said, we all want to believe that parents would never harm their children, but this actually does happen. It happens every day. It's extremely sad. It's heartbreaking. But could this have been the case in Garrett's disappearance? I don't know. No one knows. And the only person that knows anything because he was there is Kevin. And he was distraught that his son went missing. And 15 minutes. How far could a 12-year-old get in 15 minutes when he was supposed to be on a 150-yard walk? If he got missing, he could have kept going and going and going and going. But I'm sure that because Garrett just took the wilderness survival, that's like the first thing they teach you. If you get lost, stay where you're at. Do not keep moving. So I don't know. I don't think that the simplest explanation in this case is the correct one. I think there is a lot beneath the surface that was never shared. And I think that someone knows where Garrett is. I don't know if we'll ever find out, but my heart really does break for his family. They've been without their son for 20 years. And while they've done a lot of good with the Garrett Bardsley Foundation and helping in searches, I just can't imagine the heartbreak of your child going missing outdoors and you never seeing them again. I mean, 20 years. 20 years. And the search mile was huge. They had dogs. Like, it's always crazy to me when people go missing and dogs do not pick up on the scent. And that is so bizarre. So that is the story of Garrett Bardsley, the missing Boy Scout. And now we're going to talk about our missing person. His name was Melvin Heaps, and he went missing near Crystal Lake, which is also off of the Mirror Lake Highway. And it's actually like by Washington and Trial Lakes as well. So Melvin Heaps lived in Arizona with his wife, and they were actually visiting Utah to visit one of their children. Melvin set out for a hike on Monday, July 31st, 2017. He had hiked in the area multiple times per reporting done online. He was very experienced in this area. Now, Melvin was known to take relatively short hikes, no more than 2 miles in and 2 miles out. So we're looking at hikes 4 miles or less. And he probably kept it short because he was 74. He told his wife that he was going for a day hike in the Crystal Lake area, but did not specify which trail he was going to be on. And this is a quote from his wife. He's a 74-year-old man that loves the Uintas. In fact, I teased him before he left. I said, "You're having a love affair with the Uintas." And he says, "Yep." So he loved the Uintas just like I do, and he knew them extremely well. Now, he did not return home from his hike, and his family reported him missing at midnight that same day. Summit County Sheriff's deputies found Melvin's vehicle at the Crystal Lake trailhead. The Crystal Lake trailhead sits in the upper reaches of the Provo River drainage, and it's about 4 highway miles southwest of Bald Mountain Pass. Visitors reach it on a spur road that provides access to the popular U.S. Forest Service campgrounds at Washington and Trial Lake. So you wouldn't park at the Crystal Lake trailhead if you were camping in these other areas, because you would park there if you were going on a short day hike or backpacking overnighter. The Loop Trail is located about 2 miles off of the Mirror Lake Highway and about 27 miles into the Uinta-Wasatch-Cache National Forest. And this is actually an access point for multiple trails. So, like, a lot of trails spur off from this area. And let me tell you, my husband and I did this hike on July 3rd this year. And the Crystal Lake hike is 0.9 miles, so it's really short. And it goes around Crystal Lake, which is like a very small lake. You can see across, no matter where you're on the lake, you can see across the lake. It's pretty small. So as soon as he was reported missing, a full-scale search effort launched late that night. And technically it was like the next day because it was after 12 a.m. And over the course of the next week, deputies, search dogs, volunteers, and helicopter crews scoured the area around Trial, Washington, and Wall Lakes without success. And like I said, I just want to point it out, since 2003, the search and rescue team has only failed to find 2 people, Garrett Bardsley and Melvin Heaps. Now, Melvin, he wore a hearing aid in one ear and was completely deaf in the other. And Melvin's wife feared that, Melvin's hearing aid battery might have died, and this would have made it very hard for him to hear helicopters overhead or people calling out for him. So that is what Melvin's wife was scared of. Like, his hearing aid might die, he's deaf in the other ear, he won't be able to hear searchers calling out or even helicopters. And you might be thinking, whoa, there's no way someone can't hear helicopters. Yeah, there is. Because if you have a hearing difference and it's profound and you have sensory neural hearing loss, you would not hear a helicopter. My husband is hard of hearing, and he went to the Deaf University in DC, Gallaudet, and he has like profound hearing loss. And I've set off the fire alarm and he's not stirred. He hasn't woken up. I mean, so people with varying degrees of hearing loss do miss a lot of sounds. So I then read an article by Dave Cawley, and he does the Cold podcast, and he stated that this area seems to be the Bermuda Triangle of Utah's mountains. A lot of people vanish in the general vicinity of the Mirror Lake Highway, like pretty often. There have been multiple people, including children and adults, go missing in the area over the years, including 2 women, Kim Beverly and Carol Weatherton. I will not be covering their cases on this podcast. Well, I don't know. I might cover their cases, but just for right now, I just wanted to mention them because this was kind of a more recent case that happened. But Kim and Carol went missing, and it's a very strange story. And so maybe I might cover it, but who knows? I will have I will link in the show notes an in-depth case reading, including photos and maps that show notes, because this is very interesting. So the trails all surrounding this area were searched on horseback, by foot, and with dogs. And I saw a picture of where the searches took place on the trails, and it's obvious that Melvin was not on a trail because they would have surely found him because they did extensive searching. It's like, when a child goes missing, there's an extensive search effort, and same for an elderly person. Extensive search efforts because these are our most vulnerable populations outdoors getting lost. Now, like I said, Dave Cawley actually went out and searched in the areas that were not initially searched by search and rescue. Dave has a great post on backcountrypost.com. I will link that in the show notes. And Melvin has not been seen since, just like Garrett. Melvin went off on this trail and disappeared. And they did searching immediately, and he wasn't seen or found. And so for me, for theories, I think a lot of people think he was just a hiker who had an accident and died due to exposure, and it's super sad, but I wonder why no one came forward to say that they saw him on the trail. This is an extremely popular area, and when my husband and I were hiking at Crystal Lake in July of this past year, so 7 years after Melvin's disappearance, we saw at least 15 to 20 people fishing. We were the only hikers on the trail, but we saw a lot of people standing around the edges of the lake fishing. So it's just weird to me that no one made note of Melvin. I would, if I saw when I see a very elderly person hiking, I'm like, whoa, that's freaking badass. That's amazing. And I take note of it because I think it's awesome they're still doing that at their age. But no one's come forward to say that they even saw Melvin on the trail. And I'm sure he was on the trail, but I just wonder why no one's come forward. And for Melvin, yes, he was older. He could have had an aneurysm or a heart attack and fallen, and he could be in a crevasse somewhere, but where is he? Because they did extensive searching, like I said, with dogs and helicopters and everything, and he has never been found, ever. And for him, it's been 7 years. And so I'm just wondering if I want to go off the deep end, if you guys have ever heard of Missing 411. Yeah, I know people have different opinions and views about it, but I don't think that the simplest explanation in these cases is the right one. I think these cases are very unique, and the disappearances are mind-boggling because they both went missing in such a short distance. And actually, this summer, I did the Lost Lake Loop, or was it the Lost Lake Loop or something else? I can't remember. I did a loop in this area, and it started at the Crystal Lake Trailhead, and it was 5.8 miles, and I did it in a day. It was a really easy trail, hiked it in a day, saw a lot of backpackers, saw fishers. It was beautiful. I can't wait to hike it next year. But this is the trail that Kim and Carol went missing from. And I suspect that Melvin might have been doing a trail off of this trail. There were several intersecting trails. And so there are so many people that go out and recreate in this area. It seems impossible that no one's found his remains or any of his belongings. And I just think it's crazy. It's so bizarre, like I get it. Like, if a single person goes on a backpacking trip and it was supposed to be like hundreds of miles and they're not seen again, that's a little bit different. Different circumstances, different people, different goals and objectives for their trips. But both Garrett and Melvin were in a very populated area on a short walk, and disappeared like that. Bam, never to be seen again. And to me, that is just so bizarre. So I just want to give a description of Garrett and Melvin because they are both still missing and their families would love to be able to have answers and lay them to rest. Garrett was last seen on August 20th, 2004 in the Cubrent Lake area in the high Uinta Mountains of Utah. He was last seen wearing a black hooded sweatshirt, red sweatpants, a t-shirt, and Converse shoes size 7 to 8. He had straight shoulder-length hair and a gap between his two front teeth. Melvin was last known to be wearing a long-sleeved red shirt with beige stripes, Van Heusen brand, blue trousers, zippered fly, possibly Faded Glory or Wrangler brand, elastic clip-on suspenders, LDS one-piece undergarments. He was also wearing brown hiking boots sizes 9.5 to 10, thick multicolored socks, and an unknown brand analog watch with a leather band. Melvin wore gunmetal gray wire-frame prescription eyeglasses with an auto tint with a clip-on flip-up sunglasses and a white handkerchief. He had a hearing aid in his right ear. He was also in possession of his brown leather wallet and contents, chapstick, and a Toyota key and fob. If you have any information on either of these cases, please contact the Summit County Sheriff's Office at 435-615-3600. And I'll also link the Cold Case Submit a Tip hotline because these are just bizarre cases. This geographical area, like I said, the Garrett Bardsley Foundation assisted in 14 other searches since 2004. From 2004 to 2019, there were 14 other people go missing in this area. And part of that is because there's a lot of people outside recreating out there because it's awesome. But part of it is also because this area is completely wilderness. Once you step past the well-established human areas, you have like these trails and campsites and campgrounds, you are in complete wilderness. It's beautiful, but it's also a little bit spooky. So if you know anything about either of these two cases, you need to report that and make a call. As always, recreate responsibly, have fun, and remember, sometimes the great outdoors aren't always great. See you next time. Thanks for listening to Morbid Outdoors. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, make sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform. It's free, easy, and it helps us out immensely. When you subscribe, you get updates on our latest episodes, and it also boosts our visibility, making it easier for other curious souls to find us. Another great way to support Morbid Outdoors is by leaving us a review. Whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, a quick review helps us know what you love about the show. Find us on Instagram and Facebook at Morbid Outdoors Podcast. You can email us case suggestions and your campfire stories at morbidoutdoorspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks so much for the support, and I'll see you next time.